Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm host Michelle, and I am joined today again by Megan Macdonald of Expansion Healing.ca. Megan and I had a wonderful conversation about Shivambu a couple weeks ago, which you can find on my YouTube channel. It's episode 72 of The Healing Home, and we dove into it head first, and there was so much we didn't get to cover that I invited Megan right back onto the show so we could continue what we started. And I just cannot wait to get back into it. And so thank you, Megan, so much for being here. I want to allow you to introduce yourself for people who may not have seen the first episode. If you want to just briefly do that, and then we'll jump right into Shivambu.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me back. I love the conversation too. And there was so much that we could have kept going on. So I'm glad to get a chance to cover those things. What am I? I'm invested in holistic healing practices. I live in Canada. I was born on an island on the East Coast. I've lived all across the country, and I've also spent 9 years in Europe, mostly in Germany and in England. And this really informed my sense of holistic wellness because, especially in European countries, a lot of things are more normal, accessible, whether it's homeopathy or going on what they call, like in Germany, a cure or a cure. Like if there's something wrong with you because you're stressed, they send you to thermal baths to help you cut your stress and get healthy again. And they do it preventatively. And so this idea of what is preventative, what is holistic, what is something that we can access naturally is part of what drew me into things like yoga, because I could keep myself quite healthy with that. And it just happened that when I did my yoga teacher training, I've been doing yoga since 1998. And back in 2013, I ended up doing some training, and I thought I was just doing it for me, just for my own, benefits. But my teacher knew about Shivambu and about which is urine therapy. And I found myself at the same time also meeting my spiritual teacher, Dalian, who lives in British Columbia. And these two methods have just transformed the last 11 years of my life. I am more centered, more grounded, more present. I don't blame other people as much for what happens to me. I take responsibility for my own feelings, for my experiences. When I get triggered by something, I'm usually able to catch it pretty quickly and go, "Oh, where did that come from? And why is that in me? And why am I reacting this way? And do I need to talk to that person, or do I need to look at the situation?" Which ultimately leads to a life with more ease and less struggle. And that is part of the spiritual path of finding that place where you can breathe through things, where you don't stop your breath, where you stay present and aware. And the more I do this, the more I find I end up getting to meet really interesting people. I get to do more of what I want to do, and I start to see how life has linked up for me. And so, for example, in my background, my whole background was theater from the time I was a kid. I loved theater. I threw myself into it. My dad worked at the theater when I was a kid, so I got to hang out there. And then I ended up doing going to Germany first as an exchange student, but then I did a degree. And like every other normal person, I did one in German and drama, because that's the way to, make a great future for yourself. But after that, I actually worked for the federal government in Canada on event planning. So basically, governmental theater is how I thought of it. And I was planning things like royal visits and state funerals and like national days on Parliament Hill. And it really was an amazing experience to look at how we perform what we believe as a society, how we do things with our bodies because of what we believe as humans. So then I went and did graduate work and got to write about what we believe. Like literally, like the title of my thesis when I finished was The Performance of Belief. I had no idea. I was like, what am I doing? But I'd been given this opportunity to do doctoral work. And so I did the thing that pulled me in the most. Fast forward a few years after I finished the doctoral work, I was back in Canada, and that's when Shivambu and the Dalian method came for me. So I give that bit of a background just to say, because I said, I see now how the pieces have fallen into place, because in my current life, my doctoral work is helping me do deep level research into urine therapy, into Shivambu, because I have that research background and I like it. My theater work and broad theater work in terms of why do we do what we do when we believe something, what do we do with our bodies, helps inform me when I work with my clients. What do they believe? Why are they doing what they're doing? And how is that leading them to the outcomes they're getting? And so I don't have a psychology degree, like it's a PhD, which is Doctor of Philosophy, but it's that sense of what I studied was very much that sense of where like religion, liturgical belief, theology going in that direction. And so now everything that I've done fits into that puzzle of why I'm interested in what I'm interested in now. So if that helps people understand a little bit, like how did this person end up researching and being really like invested in the study of pee, which is not where I started at all.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad to get that more background on you, because that's really cool. The event planning, I love your perspective on that too, of just seeing how people play out their beliefs, how that happens, what that looks like. Wow, that's really cool. I really enjoy hearing that. And I think it always makes sense, like all the paths lead back to us. So very cool. And then to hear that too, that the reason for your ability to research this so deeply, that makes sense as well to me. And I'm grateful to have met you, because it's really cool what you're doing, and this topic in general is just so important, I think. And it seems to be becoming more popular, like, and it might be because I'm putting out content about it, but I'm getting recommended more things about Shivambu. I'm seeing more shorts on even YouTube coming through, where people are talking about how they've been doing this for years, but they never talked about it until now. So there are more people, even in my immediate circle, friends of mine who heard our first talk, and they've now incorporated it into their lives, or they're slowly
Yay.
starting. I just went to a potluck last weekend, and one of my friends told me that after listening to our episode, she goes, I had to just try it because of the things you guys were talking about. And then my fiance Mario and I have been doing it, so she was like, if you guys think it's working, I needed to try it too. And so it just, like, it felt so good to hear that she took the step to just start trying. And that's the first thing that needs to happen, is the step, right?
Yes.
So it's exciting times, and I think more people are just being open to it instead of shutting it down immediately and being grossed out by it. So that, in my opinion, is definitely a win for sure.
Yay. Yes.
Well, and one of the things that we did not talk about that we wanted to, even backstage after the first conversation, we talked about this, was hormones and the hormonal balance that can come from Shivambu therapy. And this is for both men and women. It's not just a woman thing, even though a lot of times women, it's looked at highly with women. Hormones are, because of menopause and things like that. But we must remember that men also have their own cycles as well. And so, if you could talk a little bit about your story with your teacher, what she went through as a menopausal woman, and how Shivambu helped her to be really balanced during that time.
So my teacher was Shakti Mai, who was my yoga teacher, training teacher. She's the one who'd been doing Shivambu for 30 years when I met her. So now she's been doing it for about 40. She'd been living in Vancouver teaching yoga for 30 years and just was an amazing person to talk to. Part of the story that she told about when she was in her early 50s was all her female friends said, you need to go to this women's clinic in Vancouver. And I'm retelling Shakti's story. So I may be leaving something out. She told this story to me 11 years ago, just to say maybe she tells a slightly different version of it. But this is what I remember. She went to this women's clinic, and I guess it was something where they just run a bunch of panels and they tell you how your bones are doing, how your hormones are doing. They, recommend things if you are having anything come up, which might be related to menopause that is bothering you, whether it's sleeplessness or dryness or whatever. And she went and had, paid to have this test done. And at the end, they said, do you mind if we run the test again? It seems like something went wrong. So she went, okay, go ahead. And so they ran it again. And they came back and said, we got the same results. What are you not telling us? And she said, do you have an open mind? And the doctor sort of went, okay, yes, I have an open mind. And so Shakti told her, I've been drinking my urine for daily for like 30 years. And the doctor immediately made the connection and said, oh, you're doing HRT, hormone replacement therapy, on yourself. Now your levels make sense. because your body's producing your hormones. Those are present in your urine. You're taking it back in. And so she wasn't deficient in the things that they were trying to find. They expected at her age to find, I don't know what the normals are for somebody who's 52, but whatever they were looking for, she didn't have it. And whatever else, I don't know what else they tested, but it was enough that as soon as she said that, they understood why her body was different. And she reported in her from her own side that she had had no signs of menopause, like no symptoms. She didn't have hot flashes. She wasn't having sleeplessness. Her libido wasn't down. Like all of those things that our women are told are normal were not happening. And that to me was a huge story in and of itself. I was 35 at the time. I wasn't thinking about menopause, but a lot of the women in my family had talked about, if nothing else, how much they had had hot flashes and how difficult they'd found that to manage. And I thought, if I don't have to have hot flashes, that would be amazing. So, in and of itself, that made me interested.
This story is incredible, and it's one of the things that immediately attracted me to your work when I heard the story, even though it didn't happen to you, obviously. But just hearing this alone is so profound. And to me, then it makes me think about, obviously, it's hormonal balance that's coming through the Shivambu, but is menopause sort of like, I don't want to call it a symptom, but a symptom of, I guess, uh, deficiency of some kind as well? And is it that we go through our lives and are just deficient in all of these things? Are we deficient in ourselves? And
Mm.
that is what ends up coming through, because you hear these stories of people, and I've talked to women who are friends of mine who've gone through menopause, and a lot of times it's just the things that you maybe didn't pay attention to, the things that you maybe didn't resolve, the things that were looming or what have you, that just start to really, really come up during that time. And it can kind of, there's a scale of difficulty for certain women depending on what their life path was or what they did or didn't focus on. And so the Shivambu thing, like we talked about in the first episode, to me is just like, you are taking in you. You're taking in you every single time. So just a thought that comes to my mind. I don't know if that makes you think of anything or brings a thought to you, but I'd love to hear your opinion on the deficiency of self. Is that what's going on in some sort of way?
Well, isn't that the malaise of our time?
Point.
In in some ways, we are in our, what, the last 100 years in particular, maybe a bit longer, but the more we have gone toward mechanization and, uh, living more isolated from family and community, not on the land, not nourishing our microbiome, not being in touch with the histories of our people, of our ancestors, of all these things, we're deficient in ourselves. Absolutely.
Yeah, and deficient in tradition. And tradition is so important, obviously. And, here in the West, I feel like tradition is not sacred, not
No.
as sacred as it is in the East, at least just observation based off of research,
Mhm.
having gone to some of the Eastern countries, even just in Europe in general. There's much more tradition and history in a place even like Ireland that you feel palpable when you're there, versus in the West. I think it's all more about, the what's new, let's get it fast, let's forget about what was, or do we even really know what was? And that to me is exactly to your point of that is leading us away from self. It's leading us away from the sacred center. And I think that's also why Shivambu is kind of like this thing that's like hidden in the closet or whatever, that some people are very aware of. And once you start to be more aware and start incorporating it into your own daily practice, you do feel more centered and you start to feel more like yourself. So it makes so much sense to me.
I mean, one aspect too of, we can say Western culture, but a lot of what we think of as Western, like, sort of new Western culture
Mm, mhm.
are colonized lands.
Right.
And in colonized lands, the settler people have had to do a sort of self-hypnosis to forget what they perpetrated on the people who do have a deep history and deep tradition on that land. In order to keep doing that, in order to keep saying, "It's okay for us to be here, it's okay for us to behave however we want to and take whatever we want." And it's not that there's no tradition in the newer Western lands, it's just that the people who were in power tried to erase, forget, or self-hypnotize their way out of acknowledging that history. And so we have forgotten ourselves by also trying to forget the people that we have taken things away from.
That's a great clarification. Thank you for that. Yeah, that is a way more that's a very holistic way of putting it. I appreciate that perspective because you're totally right. And as soon as you said it, I'm like, that's exactly right. That's
Yeah,
totally what's going on. It's like the new Western culture
yeah,
entirely, which is again that part of the agenda to erase the tradition, to take us further away, and
yep,
then to put us on the internet, to put us on social media, which takes us further away from ourselves. Because at least for me, I find myself comparing myself to others when I'm on those platforms
yeah.
way more than I would like to. And then that causes all sorts of negative spirals. And so, anyway, yes, thank you for the distinction. I appreciate that for sure.
Well, and it's something that I think about because, as far as like I have not done this research, but I have read a lot of people who have done this research, and they all say if they ask somebody, if they're an anthropologist or if they're just somebody who happens to go to some like little village in Mexico or in Ecuador, and they manage to talk to an elder, and they're like, "Do you know about urine?" The elder's always like, "Of course. Of course we know about urine. Why wouldn't we? We do this with it, this with it, this with it." But they don't jump up and down and yell about it. But it's like every indigenous culture knows.
Totally, and that's the thing, like we talked about in the beginning, or sorry, in our first conversation about the Shiva, and Shiva saying, "Shh, be quiet. This is not for everyone." And I remember that distinctly when you're describing the word Shivambu and Shiva making a point to remind people that this is not for everyone and it isn't meant to be shouted from the rooftops necessarily, although here we are on the internet talking about it. But I think the shouting from the rooftop should be differentiated between trying to force this onto people or to convince people of something. That to me is the version of shouting from the rooftops that Shiva is probably dissuading us from, or these traditionalists who knew this practice. It's that, well, yeah, we can talk about it, but it's not meant to just like, you're not supposed to just try and change everyone, because it has to happen on their own time too, because this is such a practice that you must be in a certain place, I feel like, within yourself and in your heart to be able to want to even do it. And so I think that that's really interesting and something to keep in mind as well.
So, talking about Shiva, and I don't remember if I said this in the last show or not about Shiva and Ambu to explain Shivambu. Okay, so you think I did, okay.
You can
Um,
say, but maybe go through it again for people that didn't hear it.
okay, so Shivambu is the word, the ancient Sanskrit word for urine, and it is the precursor to modern Ayurvedic medicine. It's Shivambu as a medicine, as a practice, is thought of as the mother of Ayurvedic medicine. And there's a text called the Dhamma Tantra, which is 5,000 years old, and it talks about Shivambu. And Parvati goes to Lord Shiva and says, "Lord Shiva, why is your skin so beautiful? Why are you so healthy?" Or sort of thing. And Lord Shiva goes, "Shh, don't tell anyone I drink my pee." And then there's all these slokas or verses that talk about it. And there are some things in there that say someone who practices daily Shivambu for 10 years will be able to like destroy all disease and be like live to 200 or something. Well, I've been doing it for 11 years and I have not destroyed all disease yet. So is that a sign that I'm doing it wrong? Or is that just a sign too of like modern times and I'm not living the life of a disciple in the forest or sitting under the Bodhi tree and meditating? I'm not sure. But are there huge health benefits? Yes. Anyway, so Shivambu is Lord Shiva and Ambu. Shiva, of course, meaning one word for God, but then Ambu meaning water or waters of the body in this case. And so you put Shiva and Ambu, you get Shivambu. And if you want to, you can interpret that in many ways. It could be water of God, divine water, holy water, but Shiva is also the god of awareness or consciousness. So water of awareness or water of consciousness. But Shiva is also the god of destruction. And what we see with people over and over again when they start working with Shivambu is often they have a healing crisis of some kind. And ongoing through life, if you make this something that is a practice, like in my life, I'll go through periods where everything is very calm, and then all of a sudden something will be brought to the surface. And I now understand it as the Shivambu has found something that needs to be, quote, destroyed, taken out of my system because it is not of me. Now, what is it taking out of me? Is it just like toxic fumes that I've inhaled because I live in an industrial society and I breathe things in that I shouldn't be, like my body doesn't like? And so at certain points, the Shivambu has to clean house because I've got chemicals in my body because I'm a human on the planet. Is it old thought patterns as I work on my spiritual things? Is there something that I learned from my society or from my family or my ancestors or whatever, where it's like, that's not a great pattern? We can, like, of anger or of resentment or of blame. So like let's work on that. But as you get rid of that, the Shivambu is helping you destroy the old pattern. And every time something is destroyed, there's the opportunity for new awareness or consciousness to come in. And so this is part of what's so amazing about naming it Shivambu, is that I see the pattern that was identified as like, who is Lord Shiva? What does Shiva represent? What can we learn through the study of Shiva? And then it's going, I see that in the Shivambu. I see that in how this medicine works.
Yeah, this explanation of the name really is a game changer. The whole practice is a game changer, but learning about the phonetics of the name, the meaning of Shivambu, it has been really revolutionary. And that to me, I love the aspect of destroying. And I'll say, just over the last few days, having a few of my more emotional thought patterns being brought up to the surface, one that I definitely have worked with before, but this time it feels different. Like it's it wants me to really get to the root of this one and finally allow it to be dissolved. I can feel it. It feels different in my being. The conversations that I've had around it over the past day or two have been different in the way where I'm feeling more things like something is lighting up in a different way. It's breaking up in a different way. Has it been very fun? No. Is it ever fun to have to, be reminded of a negative pattern that you have or a block? No. But I will say that there is a different light to it this time. There's a different feeling, and I do contribute it to the practice of urine therapy and Shivambu, and that doing that exact thing of coming in and being like, all right, we're going to do this one because this is one that is holding you back in certain aspects. And I would be denying myself to say that it isn't, because when it does come up, I feel that visceral feeling in my heart of like, oh my goodness, this needs to be, acknowledged again. So yeah, it's a big deal. It's really cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah. On the hormone thing, just my own experience from 35 to 46 with it has been that my own moon cycle got a little easier immediately just by drinking fresh. Like I noticed it within the first year of drinking fresh that my cycle was a little more easeful, more fluid. Um, Over time that continued. I never had a difficult one to begin with though. So it's not like I went from being bedridden to not like that. I don't have that story. I do know some people who would recount that they had major shifts. Mine were more subtle, but I could still sense them. And overarchingly, what I noticed is then that things like PMS were way softer. And again, it was not horrible, but I would always have maybe 2 or 3 days where I'd be much more catastrophic about something. So if there was something I was worried about, suddenly I was more polarized about it. Only for a few days, and I would usually catch myself and go, "Oh, right, okay. I will not feel quite this way about it in a week. Like this is going to pass." And that was with the fresh. Then when I added in using evolved, I noticed another shift in it where again it took another piece off of it. So it continued to just get a little easier. And when I did go into a what I would call a more hormonal response, I was faster to catch it, more aware. This is what's happening right now.
Yeah, I could see that pattern. Again, the awareness, there it is. And being able to be aware of yourself and know when you need to kind of realize what's happening. And I think that's part of the Shivambu of what it wants you to do is just to be more present. And I kind of think we touched on that a little bit in the first episode, but the presence of mind and how important that is. And just even for life shifts for men and women as we get older, how much more important it is to have that presence of mind so that you can tune in and to not blame the hot flash or just blame the fact that, oh, I'm getting older, so my testosterone is lowering or this or that. And, there's so many times where we use age as an excuse. And Shivambu is teaching me over and over things that I've already started to known about myself and life about age is that it's not only like a mindset, but it's an emotional mindset or it's an emotional heart center place that you're in if you aren't attaching yourself to that or you're not being aware that we need to be tuning in to these shifts in ourselves and not ignoring them, which is what the new Western world is wanting us to do, is to ignore the shifts and then just blame it on something else.
And take a pharmaceutical for it.
Yes, exactly. And to call it something bad, like it's a negative thing. It's like, no, we have to go through this because it's the cycle of life. And that's the other thing, too, that I wanted to kind of segue into talking about pharmaceuticals. Okay, sometimes I think people are nervous about urine therapy if they're on a medication. And what does this look like for people if, say, they have been on something, even just like high blood pressure? A high blood pressure medication for 20 some years. They find Shivambu and they think, okay, I would love to incorporate this. Is that pharmaceutical drug that they've been on, is that going to affect the Shivambu? And if so, how long is a safe period for them to wait before they were to start incorporating this therapy into their life?
So this question comes up all the time. The answer is multifaceted. There are lots of stories of people who've been on thyroid medication, heart medication, beta blockers, antidepressants, ADHD, like whatever it is that they've been on for a long time. And they will report that over a number of years, they came off of the medication. I'm saying number of years because I would say that's probably a good average from the stories that I've read. This is not, again, I have not had this for myself. I've never been on a medication for a long period of time. So the stories, it always takes a while. Like this is not a 1 month, 2 month kind of thing. And sometimes it takes a lot longer because it depends on the dosage people are on. It depends on how they want to go about it. It depends on whether it's the kind of medication you can slowly wean yourself off of and you can work with your medical professional who gave it to you. You can see if there's like a 3/4 dose or a half dose and they can monitor you, because some medications, if you come off them, your physical body can really suffer. So that's not good. Like you don't want to bring anybody into a crisis. And I'm not giving advice. I am not a medical doctor. I don't give advice on what to do with this. I'm just saying these are stories you can find online. If you go searching, you will find people's testimonies. And this is the sort of thing that they say. I have one friend who learned about Shivambu and really wanted to do it, but took a thyroid medication every morning. And so what she would do is in the morning, before she took it, she would catch her Shivambu in a cup. She would drink about half a cup of it, and then she would take her thyroid medication. So that the Shivambu that she drank was as far away from the thyroid medication as possible. And that made her comfortable. And I don't think she even wanted to come off the thyroid medication. Like she was fine with it. But she did want to have the benefits of Shivambu. Now, other people will say, you can try waiting 8 hours after you take your medication. You can wait 6 hours. You can wait 4 hours. You can wait 2 hours. And in that time, if you're hydrating well, you will go to the bathroom once or twice, and by then your system should have synthesized it, processed it, integrated it, and you if there's a trace in there somewhere, it's small. But the other thing is to understand that medically, I guess, or maybe this is just physiologically, maybe that's a better word. When we take something in our mouth and it goes through our system, it's going through our stomach, it's going through, was it hydrochloric acid? It's being attacked by something that's quite strong. And then it's being processed by, especially pharmaceuticals. We're told they're hard on the liver, they're hard on the kidneys. Like these other organs are actually involved in breaking them down, pulling out the various elements. And then I've read a bit about this. I'm probably going to say it totally wrong, so forgive me. But it's like the elements then are like bonded to other things within our system. So they no longer have the exact same like bonded structure. If we're thinking of like organic chemistry, where different things bond and they make those pretty little things with circles and lines between them, right? So like the bonded, how different things bond together. So when it comes out in the urine, can a urinalysis find a trace of the penicillin that you took? Yes. Is it in exactly the same form that it was in the pill when you took it? No. There are stories from the First World War about soldiers in the trenches who they would only have a couple doses of penicillin, for example, and one soldier would take it and then he would pee and the next guy would drink his pee and then the next guy would drink the next pee. And so like they would actually make the penicillin work across numerous people. However, my understanding of the world, and again, this is just because of what I've studied and what I've looked at, is that at that point, what you're getting is more of a homeopathic kind of dose. But I believe in homeopathy and I've seen it work for myself. So when the second guy drinks the urine of the first guy, he's getting like discernible amounts in the sense that you could find penicillin in the urine, but he's also getting, it's such a small amount that his body is going, like, find the thing that this is trying to kill. You know what I mean? Like it's using it as a way to do it. Or the other way to interpret it is the first guy who took the penicillin had the same infection, whatever it was. The infection present in the urine in tiny, tiny amounts, like the antibodies, the body's trying to produce the antibodies to fight the infection. The frequency of the infection is also there. And when the second guy drinks it, he's actually getting like that homeopathic dose of like cures like. The first guy has the same infection, has the same kind of antibodies, and the second guy's body is then given the instruction, go find more of this and destroy it. Two different ways to see the same thing.
Yes, that's a great explanation too. And I love the point of it's not the molecule is not the same as it was when it went to your mouth as it is in the Shivambu. That makes a lot of sense to me. And the other question I have or place I want to go with this is supplements because I take a B vitamin supplement. I have for a long time. It really does wonders for me. And when I go to the bathroom, when I go number 1, my urine sometimes is like bright yellow. And I actually collected some of that urine and I've been aging some of that urine. And I had the thought of, okay, well, is this going to be my like super dose of vitamin B urine? And then can I have urine that maybe I took MSM sulfur and I know that within the 4-hour period of taking that, I collected my Shivambu and then I can mark that as an MSM sulfur. Does that make sense? Does that translate? Are those B vitamins that are in the age urine that I've been aging for about a month now? Is it going to have a different benefit than when I took it orally, or is it the same? What does that look like? Just want to pick your brain on that.
So have you looked at the human metabolome study at the University of Alberta?
No.
Okay. They have this massive database. They've been studying the human metabolome. So everything that our body produces, and it's called the Human Metabolome Study, and they have a human metabolome database. You can just search for that online. And there's articles that have been published as well from their study, but they're studying all the different liquids, maybe beyond liquids in the body. But I know that in particular, like blood, cerebral spinal fluid, sweat, urine are some of the things that they're studying. And you can use the database, you can filter. And so if you put in metabolites, and that's another word for like chemicals that are produced within that are then found in urine. So you can click urine, and then you can click endogenous, as in produced by the body. You can click exogenous, produced not by the body, but still found in the urine. So whether that's from food or from the environment or whatever. And if you click urine and endogenous, it gives you over 3,150 metabolites that are found in the body. Included in there are B vitamins, zinc, copper, estrogen, testosterone, oxytocin. Like, I mean, pick your thing. Human growth hormone, big seller. Like in terms of people really
Yes.
love that. Almost everything that you would buy in a supplement store is on that list. So it doesn't mean your body's producing every single one of those every single day in the amount that could be detected in your urine, because you're different every day. Is your body going to produce every single thing? I don't know. But they've found over 3,150 things. And in one of the articles or one of the interviews by one of the lead scientists, he said, traditionally, if you look in a medical textbook, they may have between 50 or 100 things that they would say, like urine has 50 to 100 things in it. If you do a search online, you might get 5 to 10 things. If you dig deeper, you'll find 50 to 100. If you go deeper than that, you find the Human Metabolome Database, and suddenly we're at over 3,000. Endogenous. Now, exogenous, they're up over 5,600.
Gotcha.
And they're constantly changing, like those numbers. Those numbers are going up all the time because they're continuing their research, and it's fascinating. So run your experiment, see if that bottle that you're like, this is my B vitamin bottle. That's great. I have never done a whole lot of supplements, but at different points, I took zinc for a while. I had a B vitamin that I took for a while. I took extra vitamin C for a while. And over the first 5 years of doing Shivambu, it's like I forgot to take them. Because whatever it was in me before that was going like almost like an alarm clock to remind me, oh, take that, it'll make you feel better. Well, whatever it was that I thought I needed to feel like changed. And so I didn't reach for those things, to the point that then I suddenly went, when did I stop? It wasn't like it was a conscious choice. It just sort of faded away. And then I just kind of trusted that I didn't need it, and that if I did need it, I would take it.
Right. I can relate to that in a way because what I find and what I've found since the Shivambu, I have taken the B vitamin, as I've said, but what I always have done with supplements is hold them in my hand and then like really ask the question, like, does my body want this? Do I need it? Or is it that program going, oh, take your daily vitamin or whatever, which I've never really been a person that does that. Besides when I was a child and I was given a child's chewable or whatever, Flintstone vitamin or whatever it was. But yes, from time to time feeling like I should take this. I feel like I want to have this or what have you. But that's interesting because I can relate to that feeling. I like to hear that you just kind of stopped and it faded away. And then it was like, what happened to that? Because I'm noticing that with certain foods or types of foods, particularly sugars and like more foods like that, where the sugar in is the biggest one that I've noticed. So I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling like I don't really actually, I'm not being pulled to it as more as I was, and always have been. So I could see the same thing going on with the vitamins. And I appreciate that our bodies are already producing all of these things that we are sold. And it is a million, probably $1 billion industry, the supplement industry. So, that's another thing to look at too.
And we can be our bodies can be in a state like, if we're in stress, stress is the worst thing. Like, stress causes inflammation. Stress causes tissue to not be produced properly. Stress inhibits the production of hormones. So, if we it's sort of this it's sort of a chicken and egg thing with the Shivambu. We start drinking the Shivambu and something in us relaxes. As soon as that thing relaxes and our stress is different, then the body can actually start to try to find some balance. Because it finds the balance, then we actually don't feel the need for the thing that we thought was really helping us, but we don't attribute it necessarily back to the Shivambu, or we don't recognize that it was actually the stress that was causing an imbalance. It's not that we weren't producing the thing at all, but we could have been producing less, or even if our body was producing it, it wasn't able to really take it in or use it the way it normally would. And so the Shivambu is it that we start drinking the Shivambu and it magically produces enough vitamin B when we haven't been producing enough? Not necessarily. Maybe it's that our stress starts to go away and then our body can produce the vitamin B again. And then over time, it starts to produce enough. And then when it's back up and running, then we don't crave the external vitamin B. I mean, I'm making this up, but I mean, there's got to be some kind of thing that happens, because this is what happened to me and what has happened to so many other people. And part of it, when you talk about sugar, people report back to me so often, whatever it was that they either thought wasn't good for them, or they knew they had some sort of addiction to, like coffee or tea or sugar or salt or whatever processed food that they would reach for, they stop wanting it the same way. And it's one of the easiest ways to stop struggling with the thing you've been trying to get rid of.
Yep. I can attest to that for sure. It makes a lot of sense for sure. Man, I had another thought and it escaped me. Dang. There was something, well, either way, we'll just continue on with this weave, but the golden, the color, the gold in general. Gold is sought after, it's valuable, the element of gold, obviously, but just the color of gold is also something that I've been thinking about, and Mario and I have been talking about a lot lately, of thinking about other substances in the world that are gold and how highly regarded they are. And the first one that came to mind is honey. And basically everything that bees produce. And so anyone that's taken any time to spend time with bees or to research bees and to research their sacred nature, their vibrancy, their vibrational state, what they do, what they produce, and all the medicine that they produce for us and how valuable it is. To me, there's like this link to things that are golden that are held in high regard. So I went off on a list and I did like grass-fed butter. Ghee was another one that came to mind, and the ghee is highly regarded, obviously, in India, and so is anything that the cow produces. And when you have raw milk that is healthy and hasn't been processed, it has a yellow golden hue to it. And a lot of the milk that we get that has been processed and it's just obliterated of all the nutrients, it's that pure white color, so it's all that stuff, all the great nutrients are stripped away. And then I even went further and went into some herbs that are golden. But before I go into the herbs and stuff, I want to get your opinion on that golden weave and what you think about that. Have you thought about this? Because obviously Shivambu is golden, and sometimes depending on what you're eating, it can be almost clear and very light, but there's always a slight yellow hue to it. So let's talk a little bit about gold.
Well, it's funny. One of the things I often sign my emails with when I'm leading courses is "Stay Golden,"
Yes.
and it just sort of comes naturally as you work with it. And I will also say yellow is not a color I like to wear because it just doesn't go with my skin. Like it's not my color.
Same
Um,
here.
I will like wear yellow pants or yellow jewelry or something else because I like wearing the rainbow. I like wearing a lot of colorful clothes anyway. But yellow is not what I usually would reach for. But um, I'm very drawn. Like I always have beeswax candles in my home as well. I have some things that are like decorations in the room that are golden colored. I've always been more attracted to like gold in a ring than like I like silver, but it's just there's something that is very attractive about the gold. And the working with Shivambu, you do come to resonate with that color differently. You come to be more, yeah, again, sort of subtly aware of it because you start to associate it with something that is nourishing, life-giving, that your body, when you put it on it, your body relaxes. It's like it exhales, it lets go of stress. So that whole notion and the golden color of the sun. So when we come back to the sun, and the sun is that energy again, because it is electrical energy, and we know that when it hits our skin, we can actually synthesize vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a hormone and not a vitamin, but it gets synthesized by the sun hitting, in particular, our eyes, but also our skin. But the most of it's produced through the eyes. And that yellow color is life, right? The frequency of light that comes out of the planet from the sun is life. That is prana. That is life force. And that's part of like, there's plants that people have done experiments where they've taken a plant and they've put it in like some sort of container, given it a little bit of water, and then sealed it completely in this biosphere. And then they have left the plant alone with only sunlight and no extra water, no extra soil. They've not done anything to it. And 40 years later, the plant is still alive. Well, what is the plant getting its life from? The sun. So if we come back to that notion of like, we are also incredibly influenced by that yellow golden light that comes in. And the fact that the plasma, the blood plasma in our body is yellow, and our kidneys filter the blood and the blood plasma, and that's where we get the urine from. That urine is filtered blood plasma, and that is where the yellow color comes from. So within our body, one of the most life-giving things is blood plasma, and that's the color it holds. So,
Yeah. Oh, totally. And it just continues to inspire me in so many ways with this because the other thing, as I said, I thought about a couple herbs that come to mind. And as you brought up the kidneys, it brings me to one of the plants that came to mind, which is goldenrod. And so are you familiar with goldenrod at all?
there's a lot of it where I live. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So it's glorious. It's one of my favorites. It's beautiful. It has so many benefits, but one of its main benefits is it's a kidney plant. It's for the kidneys, it's for the bladder. It helps things to flow. That's how I always think of goldenrod as. And it's a plant too that when you look at the structure of the way that it grows, it has this long stalk which is indicative to its ability to help us stand strong and tall and be confident. But then once you get up to the flower heads, they come out like almost kind of like a toilet brush is how I describe it sometimes, because it's like a scrubber. It will go into these channels. And if there are blockages, whether they're emotional or physical, or there is, something like kidney stones or something like that, it will come through and help break this up and flush it out. But it's just this golden healer. It also has this ability to heal wounds and things like that, like bring the lips of a wound close together and helpful for just emotional exhaustion, like a person who has been through such a tumultuous time at such extreme emotions that they are just exhausted to the point where they cannot even bear to get out of bed or something. And when I'm looking at goldenrod and when I'm looking at Shivambu, I see so many crossovers, and that I see that with other golden herbs as well. Like Golden seal is another one. These plants have this ability to come in and work with our lymphatic system and help to really stimulate and heal and flush things. And so Shivambu is just right up there. And so I wondered if you had any experience working with any of these plants, or just have any extra thoughts to add to that, and how the plants transfer over with the Shivambu and all of this stuff like that.
Well, I think there's a real synergy between the plants and Shivambu, partially because it is water, and we come back to the water feeds things. Friends of mine have an off-grid acre or two. I don't know how many acres they have, but they're trying to plant like a food forest, right? So that they're planting trees that produce food, that produce whether it's apples or plums or pears, or but also plant trees or bushes that are medicine, like hawthorn and things like that, that they can have there. And because they're off grid and they're out in the middle of the woods, often when they have to pee, they just go. And there's one tree in particular they tend to pee under. Well, after a couple years, that tree is noticeably happier than the other trees. So giving our urine back to the soil that we live on, we know urine has a lot of nitrogen in it. And that's one of the things the soil needs to be able to support the good growth of a plant. But it also has all the other things that I've already talked about. So like 3,000 elements could be in there. So the way that our water supports the growth of the plants in our ecosystem then produces a plant, which is also then more in tune with us. And so there's just a synergy between the plants and us anyway. Now, you've already said in the other time we talked, you can take a plant into your body in a tincture, or sometimes there's ones that we eat, or we juice, or we do whatever, but you can also sit with a plant. You can meditate with a plant. You can, even if you know where there's a plant on your yard, you don't even have to be there. You can bring that plant to mind and focus on it and get the frequency of that plant. So, there's so many ways to work with it, and to be conscious that nature is showing us, what do you need? And maybe, like, I rarely take anything anymore, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't, or I won't, or that I think that people shouldn't. I actually think the plants are one of the best ways to come back to balance for people. A lot of people who I talk to, or have come across my path in the last few years, are so out of balance that when they start with Shivambu, the first thing that happens seems to be more imbalance, because it highlights something that needs to go. And there's just because they're already out of balance, it feels like it's too much. And so plants are often a way to help bring balance back first before they dive in with Shivambu more deeply.
Yeah, I like that element. And I remembered that when I was preparing for our talk, about you explaining the importance of rebuilding, and how plants can be a part of that for somebody who is on the path. Perhaps maybe they were taking a pharmaceutical and they're weaning off, and then they're going to need to rebuild whatever that space, whatever that space the pharmaceutical filled, needs to be rebuilt in some way. And so yes, herbs and natural remedies would be the best way to do that. And I think that the Shivambu probably appreciates the plants, and I could see how too the Shivambu would be affected by the taste of the herb or what have you. So it would be an interesting study just to, when you incorporate comfrey, is there a different sensation? Is there a different flavor versus when you're taking goldenrod or you're taking hawthorn, whatever it would be. So anyway, that I just wanted to bring that to the table.
I mean, one thing that I do, so I said I don't really take anything anymore. I just thinking what I do often is raw cacao.
Oh, okay.
And that I just think of it as medicine. So like
Yeah.
as like a spiritual medicine. So then I forget. I'm like, no, it's plant medicine. It is, right? It's a heart opener. It's a vasodilator. It has theobromine in it, which is that thing that people say, oh, there's caffeine. Well, there might be a little bit of caffeine, but really it's this, what I just said, the vasodilator. So that sense of energy that you get is because all of your blood vessels are expanding open and letting more blood flow when you take dark chocolate, especially untreated raw cacao in. You're going to get a different sense from it. And what I will put with that sometimes is ashwagandha,
Mm.
which is a really good for your nervous system. And I did that a lot during the beginning of COVID, partially because at the beginning of like sort of March 2020, not only did where I live, feel the impacts of what was going on with COVID, but my mother was diagnosed with cancer for the third time. And so I actually didn't care about whether or not there was an illness or people were sick, because I was worried about my mother living, and she is alive and she's doing very well. But for me, the like 2020 was not about the pandemic.
Yeah.
It was about her health. And I started taking ashwagandha because I was blown out a little. My stress level went up. Now, I also upped my Shivambu intake, but I found that raw cacao and ashwagandha, and sometimes I would put ginger or I would put some cinnamon, but I would go by what I was craving. And part of it was because it was comforting.
Mhm.
Because cinnamon or ginger or nutmeg were smells that reminded me of comforting foods. And in general, just sitting with a cup of cacao, like I'm not making something and drinking it down as fast as I can. I would sit with it. I would smell it. I would thank the plants. I would thank Mama Cacao. I would thank the earth. I would thank the keepers of the earth where I live. I would set intentions with this drink for whatever I needed to do or that I wasn't aware of. And then I would very consciously sip it like people would sip wine when they're tasting it, to really feel and taste and acknowledge that you're taking in a plant, in this case, like a conscious plant being into your body. And what does that feel like? Because Shivambu is a consciousness that we take in. And so approaching it with reverence. So that is a plant medicine that I work with a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, okay. That's nice to learn that you have that sense about it. And I'm not surprised that you would approach something like that with intention. And I've noticed too that Shivambu can be taken in the same way, and have begun my own intentional practice when I'm drinking the Shivambu. And I've shifted it. It was one way when I first started, and then in the mid section of, in the middle of my journey with it. And now that it's only been 3.5 months, geez, so it's like, oh, but like, I mean, even just now, even after 3.5 months, seeing my intentions shift with it and seeing how I'm evolving, that has been really cool. And I've noticed that with all sorts of things that I'll do with plants, or if I do choose to have coffee, or if I do choose to have a certain thing, taking the time to acknowledge it first before just guzzling it down or what have you. And I think that's been part of my healing process with the Shivambu, was because at first it was just like, okay, get it down. Like, let's just get it down and get it over with, kind of thing, was the first handful of times. And now it's more of like, no, like, acknowledge what this is, acknowledge your own practice with it, and what are your intentions that you want to put into it. What is it that you want to speak to the Shivambu so that you can bring it back in, and that whole thing. So there's a
Well,
big role there.
and one of the people who's been in my community for a while is a Buddhist practitioner. And she was talking about one of her teachers who said, whenever you drink water, now she extrapolated and took it to Shivambu water, but he said, sit down, be seated, hold the glass in both hands, treat the water with reverence before you drink it, and do so calmly. Do I always do that? No, sometimes I'm in a rush. But putting that out there as a like, how are we doing this? Yeah.
That's a great thought. And I can even picture that. This being seated is pretty awesome. And even if you took it to another level and like have a space outside where you're sitting on the ground. And I mean, we could go on and on about all the little additives that you can do, but the intention is huge. And I think our intentions, even throughout the day, they are held in the Shivambu. And so it keeps you mindful of what are your intentions throughout your day. What are your thoughts throughout your day? That's been one of my biggest revelations with it too, is the mindfulness that you can hold and that you should be holding, because whatever you were thinking, whatever you were, worried about or even happy about or excited about, it's all going to be in that Shivambu that you have the next time it comes around. And so that's been a really beautiful thing for me to think about, and just a nice little reminder for me to be more aware and present. But as we're starting to wrap up, I kind of want to come back. We'll start with hormones and maybe end with hormones. So one of the things that we've noticed is pheromones with urine, and the scent of urine, and what it smells like when it's applied to your skin. So I think it was just last week. I gave my fiance a hug and I smelled his beard, and I was like, wow, it smells really good. And he said, you know what? I noticed it too. And he's been putting urine on his face and his beard every morning. And he said after a certain amount of time, like 10, 15 minutes, once it dries, basically, he was smelling his own musk. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. It's like your own cologne. You literally have your own cologne. And when I smelled it for the first time, not to get too personal or whatever, but I was like, whoa, I was very attracted to it. Like, it hit me right in the feels, where I just was like, wow, I'm so attracted to that scent. And it's not surprising. He's my fiance and we've been together for many years. So it's like I'm already attracted to his scent. But those pheromones that were coming off of the urine has been so strong and profound for us. And we've just been thinking about that. So it's something I wanted to just bring to the table and ask you if you've heard other people talk about that, because also it just brings me to the more primal nature of it and the animalistic nature of it. And what do animals do? They mark their territory, they smell each other, they are interested in each other's urine and even feces to a certain extent, because they're smelling those things. It's a way that they can put off if they're mating, if they want to mate, if they're ready to mate, all these things. So it's been a really cool thing. Wanted to throw it out there and see what you thought about that.
So one thing I'm really glad you said is musk, because I can just see people going, of course, he smells like his pee. He smells like ammonia, which is what we get from cat pee, for example, on the sidewalk. And we all go, oh, that's really strong. That's ammonia. That's different. When we rub urine in the body, we don't get the ammonia, especially fresh. We don't get it at all. With age, there can be the ammonia breaks down over the first 10 days, 20, 14 days. Now, the state of when I say it breaks down, like the smell is obvious. Does the ammonia disappear from the urine? I don't know. And I don't know, again, if it's in a different chemical, like molecule state later, but different people say that it's gone and other people say it's still there. And I don't have a scientific study to say that. But that's the main smell people think of, is this ammonia smell. And this idea of musk. There's another, I talked to a woman named Claire Lautier in a podcast 2 weeks ago, and she actually used to make perfume. And she made the comment on her podcast that she started to get this musky thing as well. And she was fascinated because people would pay a lot of money for perfume that had that kind of musk in it. And here it is showing up in evolved Shivambu in particular. Now, the other thing I'll say is that when we first start rubbing it into the skin, fresh to a certain extent, but not as much, but if people start putting evolved on the skin, for a while, but it's different for every person. So what is a while? Is it a few weeks? Is it a few months? Is it a year? Often other people who are really close to you will say they can smell it on you when they hug you. Even if you put it on earlier in the day and they hug you late in the day, they'll say they can smell it. Now, some people just say they can smell it because they know you're doing it and they don't know what to do about that. So every time they think they smell it on you, even when they don't. But for the people who really can smell it, it's almost like when we first start using the urine also cleans the skin. It pulls other stuff out of the skin. How many products have we rubbed in our skin over the years? How many times have we touched something as children, or paint because we're painting a house, or chemical because we learned how to do photography in high school and our hands were in chemicals in the lab. Our skin has absorbed a lot. Plus, it's the largest organ for clearing. So we get rashes, stuff comes out through the skin. And so when we start rubbing Shivambu on the skin, it's a way for the body to let the Shivambu pull things out through the skin that are ready to leave. And I would say that most of what people think they're smelling when they say it's urine is actually the body detoxing. If people have a negative reaction to it. You're having a positive reaction because you're getting into the muskiness and the pheromones. But I just want to throw that out there for people. If they're like, I've been rubbing it in, but my partner says they can't stand the smell. You may be detoxing.
Mm.
And there's one woman who's worked with me for over 2 years now, and she kept saying all of her Evolve that she had like in the basement, in like really not that much of it. She's like, it reeks. It's all I smell when she opens the door. She's also looking for it, and she's really sensitive to it. Just like last month, she went, I've turned a corner. It no longer reeks. Because I kept saying it's going to stop. It's going to change. It's not always going to do that. It took longer with her than it did with me and a few other people. Why? I don't know. But just to say that like the first time you drink it is never going to be the nicest. The first stuff you evolve, if you ever want to evolve it, and you do not have to, I'm just going to keep saying this. People always want to go straight to the evolved. Don't rush. Please don't rush. Go slowly. Take your time. I did nothing but fresh for 5 years. There's no rush. This is a lifetime medicine. This is you and the rest of your life. You don't have to do everything in the first month. You can be curious, but like go slowly. The first urine that you evolve is not going to be the nicest. It's going to get better and better with time as you change and you change your cells and you change your DNA and you restructure yourself and you become someone who accepts. Just by drinking your urine, you start accepting more of who you are. Well, the urine is going to taste different. It's going to age different. It's going to smell different. And when you rub it back on your skin, it's going to do something different than it did at the beginning.
Thank you so much, Megan. This was awesome. I'm so glad we got to talk again. I know it's not going to be the last time. Probably won't be as soon as this time. I know you've got some traveling coming up, which I hope you have the best time traveling, and can't wait till we get again. I really also would love to interview at some point about the Dalian method, because we've been talking so much about Shivambu, and I know that Shivambu is going to be part of it, but I want to learn more about that. I'm starting my own research on it, but also I want to hear more about it from your perspective as a practitioner who is incorporating this into her work. So just so you know, it's on my radar with you, because I even was going to incorporate it into today's interview. I'm like, no, let's not go all over the place. We'll stick with Shivambu. But yes, I want people to know that that's something else you offer. So before we drop off here, please let everyone know where they can find you. And if you have any closing thoughts, please bring them up to the audience.
Wonderful. Well, again, I've really enjoyed today. It's been so much fun. I can't believe we've already talked for an hour already. It goes by so quickly. You can find me at Expansion Healing. So Instagram at Expansion Healing, all one word. My website is expansionhealing.ca. And on YouTube, I believe it's Megan Macdonald PEI. So Megan is the simple version, MEGAN, and Macdonald MAC. And otherwise, if you search for Megan Macdonald and Shivambu or Urine, I'm pretty sure you'll find me. And on my website, it should be pretty easy to find the information for the different things that I'm offering at the moment. I do run courses. I don't have a date for the next one yet, but I will put people on a waiting list if they want to get on that. And I'm always interested to hear where people are at with their journeys with Shivambu. So if you're, Shivambu curious, you can get in touch.
Nice. Very nice. Well, thank you again. I'll have your links down below in the video description as well. And yeah, I wish you the best. And until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Stay golden.
Yes, you too. All right. Bye-bye. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And a big thanks to Megan Macdonald for coming back onto the Healing Home to join me for another episode on the wonderful topic of Shivambu. Thank you to all the patrons out there. You guys are awesome. All your support really goes a long way, and it's very much appreciated from me and Mario. So thank you all so very much. Patreon.com/thehealinghome if you'd like to become a patron, or just follow me over there on Patreon. A handbook for herbal and natural cat care is available for purchase for $11, and then you can download this PDF and have it on hand for your furry cat friend if you are wanting to learn a little bit more about herbs and natural remedies that pair well with cats, or if maybe you have some background on this and you're just wanting to find out more skills, you can check out this handbook, and it is a very wonderful and convenient guide. The Full Moon Offering newsletter is available and can be signed up for on my website underneath the newsletter tab. You can also check out all the old archived issues that I have from the first issue all the way up to the most current one. Speaking of current offerings, we are on number 45. This is my mugwort skincare full moon offering, and I am pumped about it. I've been working on this one for a couple months now, so to release this has been very exciting. I have my Earthy Glow facial oil, mugwort earth hag soap, and my mugwort and rose facial toner. All three of these are wonderful beauty products. I've been using them on my own skin, have been having some great benefits with it. And, I really went in on the Venusian properties of mugwort with this one and the Venusian correspondence of this plant. So I made these remedies on the day of Venus to harness the Venusian energies and also just bring in all that beauty, love, and luxury that Venus carries over for us. So that is all nicely tucked into all of these remedies, and I'm really happy with how they came out. Up on the screen is my current menu along with the prices. And I also want to just remind people that I am available for custom or bulk orders. So if you're interested in something like that, reach out to me through my website, michelleshealinghome.com, or you can send me an email with questions at michelleshealinghome@gmail.com. The next Full Moon Offering newsletter will drop on June 21st. So look for that and sign up so you can be informed on what I have available and what that offering is going to be. And next week, I will be talking with Ash Ritter of Black Sage Botanicals. I've been following Ash on social media for a while now, and I really love what she's doing. She works a lot with the mushroom kingdom, particularly the Amanita muscaria. So we're going to talk about that and just her background as an herbalist, and I can't wait. So that is going to be coming to you guys on June 4th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Mario just released his latest premiere on the Pleiadians, which you can find on his YouTube channel. It is a beautiful presentation, and he brings to the table some very interesting information about this wonderful star cluster. So check that out on YouTube if you haven't already. He also just dropped his first episode of his series on Patreon, Symbolic Secrets. This is for the Fool card. This is a Patreon exclusive. So if you are wanting to find out the symbolic secrets about the major arcana of the tarot, check out Mario on Patreon. You can also sign up for this membership on his website as well. All the plans start at $5 and go upwards, so you can choose what you'd like to support, and then you will have access to this wonderful series that he has been working on quite hard, and I'm really proud of him and excited for this to be dropping. It's really awesome. He's going really deep with these cards, and he's bringing up things that he's really never talked about on any other platform. So it's going to be a really nice way to just basically be able to pick his brain and hear these little tidbits that he has been learning over the years with the tarot. Symbolicstudies.com for all things Mario. You'll be able to find links to all the things that I just talked about as well. Just head to his website. It's the best place to find him, and then to find all of his social media links and all of his other offerings like his prints and his tarot readings, his study sessions, and elemental study packets. Patreon.com/symbolic studies if you are interested in joining and getting the exclusive content that I also just talked about. And with all that said, I think that is going to do it. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for all your support. And until next time, take care out there.